There was a little bit of news in college football that surprised me that they dropped it on a Friday. And I bet a lot of you didn't even hear anything about this. And you know that I am a big college football fan. And so the fact that they dropped this on a Friday, I thought was pretty significant. The college football playoff, I'm reading directly from the email release that they put out on Friday afternoon. They said that they have 4 members charged with considering options for the future format of the playoff. And they said that they have reviewed 63 different playoff possibilities. I don't even know what all of those could look like. And that those included, right now, obviously, we have 4 college football playoff teams, 6-team college football playoff, an 8, a 10, a 12, and a 16 option. And to me, this is significant because if they're coming out and telling us that they are considering expanding the college football playoff in the years ahead, it's almost like them waving their arms and being like, hey, guys, we're making a change. We just want to let you know in advance that when we're talking about a 6, an 8, a 10, a 12, and a 16-team playoff, this is, I believe, pretty far down the road in terms of what might be likely to happen. And so I asked the question, how many teams should be in the college football playoff? And I don't have enough options on Twitter to be able to put them all in there, but well over 40,000 of you almost instantaneously voted on this. And I always like to say when I give Twitter poll results, I'm not claiming that my audience perfectly reflects what sports fans believe. Certainly, any one individual's audience is not a perfect approximation of the overall United States marketplace idea. But I do have a massive number of people who are following me that are college football fans. And so when the question is how many teams should be in the college football playoff and it's out there, I think that my audience is pretty representative of what college football fans would believe. And so 20% of my audience said that the college football playoff should stay at 4. That is 4 playoff teams, best scenario. 63% of my audience said that 8 is the right number. 63% of over 40,000 voters. And you can go vote in this by yourself and knock us well over 50,000. At Clay Travis is where you can go vote in this. 63% of you said 8 was the right number. 6% of you said 12 was the right number. And then 11% of you said 16 was the right number. Now, the reason why I find this a little bit fascinating is basically this means that 80% of my fans, and I think of college football fans in general, are interested in expanding the college football playoff. And I agree with the majority of my audience here. I think 8's the right number. And I've been floating and arguing for 8 for a while. And the way that I'm not even committed necessarily to how we pick the 8. I think there are a bunch of different ways. Initially, my idea was we should take the 5 conference champs, and then we should take 3 wild cards, with one of those wild cards potentially being a non-Power 5 conference team, and that we should play the college football playoff first round with 8 teams on the home field of the 4 highest seeded teams. So 1 would play 8, 2 would play 7, 3 would play 6, and 4 would play 5. I think that setup is the right one because so much of what makes college football great is having everybody able to all be in the same sort of the home environment, right? I love going to neutral site games if it's like the cocktail party or if it's, one of these big sort of rivalry games to start the season. But I'm not a huge fan of taking the college football playoff off campus and putting them in NFL stadiums. So I think the thing that makes college football so much fun is the home field environment, and I think you should be rewarded, much like you are in the NFL, with getting to host a home playoff game if you're the higher seeded team. So I would put 1, 2, 3, and 4 on college campuses, let them host an extra home game. And then the other thing I would say is I'm kind of becoming inclined to just letting the college football playoff seed the top 8 teams and not giving any automatic bids. And so instead of taking the top 4 teams in the college football playoff selection committee, you would just take the top 8. To me, that seems like the best possible solution here in terms of initially my idea was take the 5 conference champs, but then I think you could end up with, some year you might have an 8-4, 9-4, whatever, a team that's barely in the top 25 winning one of these conferences. And do we really think that team deserves the right to play for a championship with 3 or 4 losses when there might be other teams that are far more deserving of being in the top 8? So my inclination would be to take the top 8 and hope that sometimes one of those 8 teams can be a non-Power 5 team. Or the other option I think that could be out there is take the top 7 and then the highest seeded, highest playoff ranked non-Power 5 team as well. And then you would get an advantage in theory if you're the overall number 1 seed, because you would get to play a smaller school if they were outside of the otherwise top 7, right? Now, if that playoff team was in the top 7, then I think you would just take the top 8 overall. Is that confusing? So I like the idea of expanding the college football playoff and giving an opportunity to a non-Power 5 conference team if they are able to get in the vicinity of the top 8. But I personally kind of like the idea of just taking the top 8. And I think there's a value in that as opposed to randomly picking 5 conference champs when each of those conference champs may not be one of the top 8 teams in any given year in college football. What system would you use, Dub? You're a big college football fan. You went to Auburn. By the way, did you see, I don't know the exact date that Charles Barkley did it, but did you see the audio of Charles Barkley making fun of Georgia?
Oh, yeah, I did. I saw your tweet about it.
We need to play that, by the way.
Because, one of his bits has always been kind of making fun of the women in San Antonio.
That's right.
So that's one of his more infamous ones. So it was nice to see another group of people taking the wrath of Charles Barkley there. And for it to be Georgia.
Auburn, for people who don't know, is a monster SEC football. I think it's the oldest rivalry in the entirety of the SEC, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. That's the oldest rivalry in the South. So it's a big one. Obviously,
let's play that, by the way. Let's pause here for a minute. For people out there who didn't hear this, I'm not even sure what day this was. I just saw it circulating on Twitter. But I believe Ernie Johnson went to Georgia. Will you confirm that, Dub? Will you look up, obviously, the NBA TNT show, Inside the NBA? I'm pretty sure Ernie Johnson went to the University of Georgia. And so Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was former Georgia player.
He did go to UGA.
So they're going back and forth with a highlight, and that's why there was a reference to Georgia made initially by Ernie and why Charles kind of took a shot at him. So listen to this. This was on Inside the NBA. You truly never graduate if you go to an SEC school. Ernie Johnson, Georgia grad. Charles Barkley, Auburn grad. Here you go.
The floor.
Contavious Caldwell-Pope, where'd you go to school?
Georgia.
Yes, indeed. Had 29 on the night.
Only school in the world. They named their mascot after the women down there.
Stop it now. It's just so totally uncalled for.
Wait. What they call your mascot? The Bulldogs. You said, I didn't even know that, Ernie.
Uncalled for.
Bulldogs.
Not even going to dignify that with a response.
Come on, Ernie.
Not even going to dignify.
And you had to kind of love that, right, Dub? As an Auburn guy, like Charles Barkley, first of all, I think is probably. Yeah, I was thinking about Mount Rushmore. This is a fun show we could do, by the way, when there's absolutely nothing going on. The Mount Rushmore, sort of the greatest announcers of all time and best analysts of all time. I think Barkley has to be one of the 2 or 3 best former athlete or coach analysts that has ever existed in American sports. And to me, and we could spend a long time on this, and it's a great topic, but John Madden is just an iconic voice of the NFL. I think that Kirk Herbstreit has become a super iconic voice in college football. And I would say Charles Barkley in the NBA. Like every sport has, I would say, one guy who's really strongly connected to it that's a former athlete. And I think there's a very, very strong argument that if you were doing a battle of who is the best former athlete to ever play in a sport and then become an announcer in a sport, that it would be Barkley versus John Madden for the title of best ever. Is that fair, Dub?
I think it's totally fair because there's been many a nights where Barkley has basically kept me up way past my bedtime because it's just hard to turn off the broadcast when him and Shaq and Ernie and they're going on and on and on about, because it's so different. It's so unique. It's not some boring studio show. Like, they bring something totally different every single night.
Yeah, I think that's true. But so we're breaking down the college football playoff. You just heard 63% of my audience is in favor of 8 teams in the college football playoff, approaching 50,000 people having voted in this poll. So it's, I think, a pretty representative sample of the college football fan base. And you just heard me kind of lay out the next question everybody asks is, I think 8's the right number. I agree with the strong majority here, 63% choosing that option. And then the question becomes, okay, how do you pick those 8? What would you do? What number do you think is the right number?
I think 8's probably the best number. I think I could live with 6 as well, with the top 2 getting a bye. But I'm in total agreement with you. Like, the idea of automatic qualifiers or automatic bids, I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a way to actually get the 8 best teams into the playoff, which is the whole entire point of having a playoff, is to have the 8 best or 6 best or 4 best like it currently is now. Having the automatic qualifier aspect, I think, is a horrible idea because, like you said, I mean, there could easily be, a 9-3, 8-4 team win their conference and they're like the number 21 team in the country.
Yeah.
That would look stupid. And I don't think anyone would agree that team deserves to be in that playoff. So that's the one thing that I'm not worried about it, but I would like them to see not go in that direction, if that makes sense.
If your conference can't get a team in the top 8, you don't deserve an automatic bid anyway.
Amen.
I mean, that's not top 8. Top 4 is hard, right? And certainly top 2, which is why we went to the playoff in the first place. Getting into that BCS title game was difficult. But if you can't get a team in the top 8, then your conference doesn't deserve an automatic bid. I just don't think so. I think the challenge is, what do you do for non-Power 5 conference schools? Because do you give that Cinderella opportunity out there to any of them? Would they be able to get into the top 8? Do you give like the top 7 plus the highest non-Power 5 conference team? I think that's a really interesting question.